So you know what produce you want, but do you know what variety you want? And did you know that choosing that variety is actually hugely important for preventing against disease and pests and just overall getting a harvest at the end of the year? I'm here to tell you why. Often here we talk about diversity, and the reason why I say this has nothing to do with my thoughts on diversity and variety when it comes to produce. It actually comes down to science. The 3 Ds of horticulture state variety as being one of the keys, and oftentimes we use the number 3 to reference how many different varieties you should have. Now, when I say that, I don't mean you need 6, 6, and 6. I mean you need 1, 1, and 1 of each tomato, or whatever the case is. The reason for this is it's going to help you get away from potential disease issues, pest issues, and just overall climate issues that may be happening in your garden. The goal here is to obtain a harvest regardless of what interferences we may experience. But how do you choose the varieties, and what varieties should you choose based on your gardening experience or some issues that you have had in the past? Well, let's go over that here today. The number one thing to choose is actually local varieties, ones we know that are successful locally. This could be from a seed saving scenario, maybe a seed exchange in your area. All these varieties grown locally are not only just adapted to pests and potential climate issues or disease in your area, but just overall, they are meant to grow for your zone. The second thing you want to consider is knowing your limits. So this is knowing your dates. How many growing days do you have? Choosing a variety that falls in your growing days or less than your growing days, it's going to be hugely important in ensuring you get a harvest before the frost hits. Now, keep in mind, if you go for something that has fewer days, like 30 days for growing, these are plants that actually may bolt in very high heat. And so these plants you may want to consider growing earlier in the year, maybe in the spring or the fall. For all of us out there that are preppers or survivalists in some way, things you may want to consider are plants that save seed well, meaning ones that are not hybrids or GMO or anything crazy like that. You may want to go for heirlooms in this case. And now when I say heirlooms, the reason for this is because these are proven and known to give us results year after year after year, regardless of potential conditions that may be out there. So if you're trying to make a seed storage for survival in some way, that would be something to consider. This one is kind of threefold. You want to look at the diseases you have, the pests you've had, and what climate issues you have. Does it get really hot during the summer? Do you need to consider a lettuce variety that is resistant to bolt? That may be a consideration. Do you have a specific disease that you're battling all the time? Maybe it's late blight in tomatoes. Well, if that's the case, you may want to consider an early girl or a Manitoba tomato, something that tends to produce earlier in the year, so you don't end up with late blight this year. And the same rule applies to pests. Now, this one can be a little bit different, and the disease one can also be a little bit different as well. You could go for GMO, for example, and allow you to spray for the pest or the disease in question. Now, I am a pretty chilled out person. I don't care what route you go. There's no shame here. And the last thing to look at is flavor and color. These two things are actually pretty important. So for example, when we look at a tomato, we have slicers, we have canners, we have salsas, you name it. And all of these have a very different texture from one another. So you may want to go for a variety in texture. This will appease your taste buds. You can also do this with cucumbers as well. You can get ones that are not as juicy or watery and some that are a little bit more firm. Again, this is another example of something that we can use that gives us a little bit different texture. We can apply this to color, whether it's different colored carrots or potatoes or pepper plants, you name it. Now, what you can consider here is maybe a combination of different variety aspects we like. So for example, if we like a beefsteak tomato that has all the nice juices in it, but we want it to be late blight resistant, well, a quick Google search is going to give us that result. We can also apply this to lettuce, for example. If we want a leafy green that is colorful and purple, but is also bolt resistant, quick Google is going to tell us what that variety is. So feel free to mix and match these as needed, because you'll often find that heirlooms that are great for seed saving have really good flavor and awesome texture, also may have some resistant to downy mildew in the case of basil, all these things. I hope this helped you guys decide on what 3 varieties you're going to get for every single type of produce you have in your garden. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.